Welcome to Invisible Dimensions, where we share our mystical, paranormal, and supernatural encounters. Many people testified to having seen him, but I couldn't believe. I was one of those doubting Thomases who only believed after seeing. Angel of Romance is the name they had given him after being spotted on various occasions caressing girls in their sleep. Our school, Sacred Heart Girls, had slightly over 1,000 girls, all boarders. The school had about 10 dormitories accommodating all of us. My dormitory, which was the newest, was called Sacred Heart after the school itself. It was a huge story building with three floors painted white and grey, the colors of our school uniform. I, with over 100 other girls, slept on the first floor. The ground floor was majorly occupied by those in the final year. The Form 1s occupied the second floor. I was in Form 3. That evening, I felt unusually tired. It's true, I rarely attended evening preps. Not that I was lazy, but just that I hated studying in the evenings. One, because it was never completely quiet. And two, I had never mastered the art of studying on a full stomach. You see, it was the school routine to have supper at exactly 6 p.m. and immediately after settle down for evening preps. 6:45 p.m. would find all of us at our desks, studying till 9:30 p.m. All this while, the dormitories would be locked till the 9:30 p.m. bell rang. So, most evenings, I would hide in the sick bay, suffering from ailments that varied each day until the school nurse didn't know what to do with me anymore. She would shoo me off to bed in the sick bay with painkillers as soon as I set foot in her office. This was the only way for me to miss evening preps and catch up on the most needed sleep. If you have ever attended boarding school, you do understand that enough and quality sleep is quite a luxury. We would then wake up at 4 in the morning, shower, and be settled at our desks by 5 a.m. for morning preps. Whereas I hated studying in the evenings, I had no problem waking up as early as 2 in the morning to study. In fact, that was my routine. This particular evening, for once I attended evening preps like a good girl. It was on a Friday. On Saturdays and Sundays, we didn't have to wake up early and there was no morning preps. I poured through my books till at around 9 p.m. when I suddenly felt so sleepy. I lay my head on the desk, covered myself with a light shawl, and instantly fell asleep. I was awakened by the bell and the shuffling of feet as the other students left the classroom 30 minutes later. I quickly bundled the books I had been sleeping on into my locker and hurriedly left the classroom. I walked quickly towards the boarding section, and as soon as the captain unlocked our dormitory door, I pushed through the throng of students, climbed up the stairs, and stumbled into bed. I was so groggy that, save for the shoes, I slept in my full school uniform, tie and socks included. I didn't stir in my sleep until at about 1 a.m. when I suddenly woke up and sat up in bed. I don't know what woke me, but I guess it must have been the loud music coming from the cubicle next to ours. Apparently, it was one of the girls' birthday and they were celebrating. I tried going back to sleep, but the noise was too much. I kept turning and tossing in bed for about 15 minutes, hoping so hard that sleep would come, but it proved elusive. I gave up and decided to go wash my clothes instead at that ungodly hour. Although it was my routine going to class every morning as from 2 a.m., on this night it never crossed my mind. Studying in the wee hours of the morning was how I made up for the hours I lost during evening preps. Waking up very early in the morning had been my routine since I joined the school in Form 1. I had never met any suspicious people on my way from the dormitory to the classroom, which was quite a distance. In fact, I had never met anyone, just the occasional peeping in of the security guards on patrol. After some time, the guards got used to my early mornings and never bothered me. I was always mostly alone, or once in a while in the company of my best friend, Claire. I cherished the quietness of those early mornings, my mind fresh and well rested, the cool air, no interruptions from other students. It was just perfect for me. So when someone started a rumor that there was a boy who roamed our dorm at night, I laughed so hard. I was vehemently dismissive. I brushed it off as the usual boarding school stories that aim to scare students. I mean, this was my third year going to school to class at 2 in the morning, and I had never encountered anyone suspicious. Just a few stray cats and dogs that would run off. Besides, our dorm was always locked from the inside at night. The first person to wake up would pick the key from the captain's room to open it. Yet, the rumor didn't go away. Various girls admitted to having seen him on different occasions. The description remained the same though. It was a teenage boy, about 16 to 17 years of medium height, who wore black shorts and a grey t shirt. Millie, one of the girls who had seen him, said that it had been about 1 in the morning. Nearly everyone else had slept. She was sitting up in bed, reading late, when she suddenly felt someone enter their room. She looked up thinking it was a girl from another cubicle, only to see a boy moving about the room, so much at ease, touching everything that caught his fancy. Taking no notice of her, he left the room after a while and moved to another cubicle. All that while, Millie could only stare in shock. She couldn't move a muscle. Surprisingly, the boy had behaved as though she didn't exist. It was only after he had left that she was able to move. The following day, rumors had spread in the whole school like a bushfire. Of course, the whole story was distorted, but the facts remained. Everyone had their doubts. Some said Millie had been hallucinating. Others asked how she knew it was a boy, yet some girls in our school kept short hair. Why had she not screamed for help? The first account of the boy's appearance was not taken seriously until another girl, about 3 weeks later, claimed to have seen him again. The boy was again described as being clean shaven, of medium height and build, very dark in complexion, always barefooted, and wore black shorts and a grey t shirt. This time, the girl in question had suddenly awoken from sleep. The lights were off, save for the corridor lights that partially lit up the room. She did not sit up in bed, but intuitively sensing that something was amiss, she continued to look around from under the covers. It was then that her eyes made out someone bending over the lower bunk in the corner. For a while, she had thought that it was one of her roommates moving about, but she was alarmed when the person suddenly straightened up and started touching the girl sleeping on the upper bunk, caressing her. From the physique, the girl, now having been accustomed to partial darkness, she ascertained this was none of her roommates. She watched in horror as the figure moved from bed to bed, touching each of the sleeping girls in a romantic way. She didn't understand why none of the girls woke up when being touched. To make matters worse, she herself couldn't utter a sound. She had wanted to call out for help, but her mouth remained dry. By now, the girl had recognized him as the boy people had sighted earlier. The boy had finally left the room noiselessly without approaching the girl's bed. This appearance took the school by storm. The boy was immediately christened Angel of Romance for caressing girls in their sleep. Many more other girls came forward that they had felt someone touch them sensually in their sleep. Nobody wanted to sleep alone. Every cubicle had 4 bunk beds, therefore accommodating 8 girls. We could rearrange the beds at night, push them together from wall to wall so that all the 8 girls in a room slept on the lower bunks, leaving the top bunks empty, offering each other security. No one slept alone, of course, apart from a few like me who cynically believed Angel of Romance was pure imagination. Up to this time, I was still going to class at 2 in the morning for personal studies. My routine had not changed, even after looking into the anguished faces of those who claimed to have encountered him. I was still adamant that someone was playing a prank on the whole school. After about a month, everything hushed down. Normalcy returned to the dorms once again, as no one had seen angel of romance in a long time. The beds were arranged in their order, and everyone slept alone again until that fateful Friday. On this Friday, having been awakened by those partying in the cubicle next to mine, I decided to go wash my clothes. It wasn't compulsory to go for morning preps over the weekend. That's why on Fridays, people could party into the wee hours of the morning. Besides the cubicles that hosted slightly over 100 of us girls, our floor had an area from where we washed our clothes. It was at the end of the hall. Attached to the washing bay were bathrooms and toilets. It was around 1:30 when I entered the washing bay. A good number of girls were yet to sleep by then. Some were winding up their washing just as I was beginning mine. One by one, they left the room, and soon I was alone. The lights were fully on the whole floor. This was not my first time to be alone at the washing bay at this hour. The floor was stealthily quiet, just a few coughs and sneezes here and there, and soft snoring. I was just bending to start rinsing my clothes when I suddenly felt someone enter the room. Anticipating to see any of the students who maybe wanted to use the bathroom, I looked up. To my amazement, I saw no one. I was so astonished that I stood up straight to look around properly. I saw no one. I expected to see someone. Although I had heard no footsteps or any commotion, I had instinctively known, or rather felt, someone enter the room. I waited for about 2 minutes, hoping that whoever it was might have entered one of the toilets and would soon come out. 5 minutes later, no one had emerged from the toilets. My body tensed. I could feel someone was there with me. I felt like if I reached out my hand, I could touch whoever it was, but I saw no one. My body was sharply alert, apprehensive, restless. The hairs on my head stood on end, and I could feel sweat forming on my forehead, in spite of the air being cool. It was like I was in grave danger that only my body could feel, but the eyes couldn't see. In fact, if my body could have had its own will, it could have bolted from that place so fast. I willed it to stay. I was not going to run away from a danger I had not set eyes on. Everything in me screamed, "Run!" But the tiniest bit of me wanted to wait it out. Summoning all the little courage I had left, I mounted a search for the person I instinctively knew was there with me, staring at me, mocking me, yet my eyes could not see. I looked under all the sinks, in all the toilets, in all the showers, behind every single door, up the ceiling, peered down the corridor, nothing. I saw no one. By now, I was so certain of another being's presence, daunting me, daring me, watching me closely, and even laughing at my frantic search to locate it. I felt like being hunted. I felt like prey. I had the mind to pick my clothes and run back to my room, but another voice told me to stick it out, to hold my ground. I instinctively knew to draw my strength from God. I had heard somewhere that praise had the power to defeat any evil. Although I didn't know much about God, I hastily broke into the first worship song that came to mind. I couldn't raise my voice beyond a whisper, but I willed my brain to sing and praise louder all the time, praying to God that whatever it was would not harm me. The praise songs kept coming one after the other. I can't assure you that my clothes were washed clean that night. I was only dipping them in water once. I kept rinsing them, not to remove the soap, but in defiance. It was like there was a competition between the two of us, and I didn't want to be the first to blink. I had made up my mind to leave only when my washing was done, however shoddy. In less than an hour, I was done with the whole week's washing. I scrambled out of the washing bay and ran to my room. All My roommates were dead asleep. I hurriedly dried myself, changed into my pajamas, and sat on my bed. I slept on the lower bunk. By now, the dreadful fear I had had now subsided. It was a few minutes past 2 in the morning, and somehow I didn't feel sleepy. I decided to read in bed. The last person to sleep was always expected to switch off the lights on the whole floor. There was no way I was going to sleep in darkness that night. I left the lights on. Come to think of it, I don't know why that day I happened to have only my Bible, a Christian pocket prayer book, and a newsletter about prayer and fasting beside my bed when I only usually carried raunchy magazines and novels everywhere. I owned a Bible only because it was one of the school requirements. I read the whole newsletter, sleep couldn't come. Read through the pocket prayer book, no sleep. I picked the Bible and skimmed through, my eyes falling on Psalms 127, 2 that says, "For he grants sleep to those he loves." I decided to pray, asking God to give me sleep. I desperately needed it at that hour. My Father in heaven, I prayed. It is written in your word that you grant sleep to your beloved children. Please let me get some sleep. I cannot sit up all night. And please protect me from any evil lurking in the shadows. With that, I straightened myself comfortably on bed and was just pulling the blankets over my head when involuntarily they dropped from my hands. My hands shot up in the air in frightful surrender before I even saw anything. Mystified by this sharp, instinctive reaction of my body, I immediately turned my head towards our cubicle's entrance to see what was wrong, for I knew even before setting eyes on whatever it was that this was the end. As sure as the sun rises from the east, 30 centimeters beside my bed stood a boy, and from the descriptions I had heard, there was no doubt that it was the angel of romance. Clean shaven, bare feet, his trademark black shorts and grey t shirt, dark in complexion. Yes, he was human, nothing grotesque. But where had he come from? There he stood in the full glare of the lights, bending over to pick the books I had just been reading. A soundless gasp escaped my mouth. My eyes bulged in terror. My mouth went dry as it remained wide open in horror. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. My brain went blank and I remained as immobile as a statue for the period he was in the room. I could not have screamed even if I wanted to. I couldn't move a muscle. I just sat there and watched, horror stricken, wondering what he was going to do to me. I had been looking at him for a few seconds before he noticed me. Just before he touched the books, he looked up to find me staring. His eyes registered shock as they met mine, and suddenly he bolted out of the room, moving swiftly, his feet never touching the ground. In the instant he disappeared from my view, my body became mobile again, and I found myself involuntarily following him. I say involuntarily because following him was not something I could ever have done in my right senses. When I reached the corridor, he was gone. I went upstairs to check out the second floor, nothing. I went down the stairs to check out the ground floor, still nothing. It was then that I started trembling and shaking with fear. I hastily ran to my cubicle and woke up one of the girls. I incoherently mumbled the whole encounter to her. I could see that she didn't believe me. I shared her bed that morning. It was just a few minutes past 3, making sure to sleep against the wall. That encounter drastically changed my life. Since that day, I was very careful to never sleep last, nor be the first to wake up in the morning. lest I have another encounter with the angel of romance. I never had bathroom visits at night for my whole remaining period in boarding school. It was no surprise when I didn't perform as remarkably as I had expected in my final exams. I still believe seeing the angel of romance altered the course of my life. As usual, there were those who said it wasn't true, like my mother when she came for visiting the following Saturday. I narrated the whole encounter to her, every single detail. Anne, she exclaimed, are you doing drugs by any chance? Mom, I cried out in exasperation, are you even listening to yourself? You must have been having a bad dream. You know such things as ghosts don't exist. You must have been dreaming, my mother persisted. Over the years, since I left high school, a good number of students have been found dead on their beds in the Sacred Heart dormitory. Of course, the post mortems done have always shown a myriad of causes. But when you've met the angel of romance and survived like I did, you know without doubt that those girls died from fright. Their hearts could not withstand the horror of seeing what they weren't supposed to see. Most suffered heart attacks. I have always known that that night, that boy could have killed me and someone could have come up with a fictitious cause. I was only saved by grace. Have you yourselves encountered any mystical beings? We would love to hear your experiences. Please like, share, and subscribe to help our channel grow.